Hey friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Shailene Louise, if we haven't met, and I'm a watercolor painter and teacher. Today I'm going to talk you through how I make these 3 floral illustrations. I'm using watercolor paper, a size 2 and a size 4 round brush, and this larger mop brush. So I'm going to do kind of a similar technique on all 3 of these paintings. For the first one, I'm using kind of this yellow ochre background. And I'm kind of using a mixture of yellow ochre, a little bit of Payne's gray, just a tiny bit to kind of desaturate it even more. So I'm just doing an even layer, kind of an oval shape on this one. And then after that, I decided to do a kind of a dusty peach color for my second background. So I'm using alizarin crimson. There's a little bit of Naples yellow, and there's also just a little bit of burnt umber. So it kind of creates this, I call it dusty peach color. So I'm doing kind of just a light wash of it, not super dark. Once I did that, I realized that my paper was starting to buckle. So I just grabbed a block of paper and I taped it down with some masking tape, all 3 of them. So the last one is a Payne's gray blue, kind of blue, desaturated blue color. So I wanted all 3 of these to be kind of a desaturated, not super vibrant, kind of a mellow look to them. And so as I am moving into paint, what I'm doing is I'm going to paint just right on top of those ovals. And if you are new to watercolor, you'll know, or you won't know, but if you know how watercolor works, you'll know that it's transparent. So as you paint on top of a color that is already laid down, that color behind it is going to kind of shine through. So the color that's behind it is going to affect the paint that I'm putting on it. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So, usually you want to be really mindful about, if there's any colors behind it, because it is going to affect the finished product. But for these paintings, I decided to just go with it and let those background colors kind of determine what the finished paintings are going to look like. So it's going to make all of them just a little bit desaturated, maybe a little bit warmer, maybe a little bit cooler. So this one is kind of more of a warmer background, that yellow ochre. And I'm using all kinds of greens here. I'm using some olive green, some hooker's green, and I'm also mixing that in with some yellow. So a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of Naples yellow. And I like to just try and make sure there's a mixture. I like to have a mixture of warm and cool greens. I like to have a mixture of light and dark greens. And this helps to just give it a little more interest, a little bit more, I would say just it makes it feel a little bit more dynamic, a little bit less one-dimensional to have those contrasts. So light and dark, warm and cool. You want your leaves to not all be facing the same direction, but rather, some are kind of facing away, some are facing towards me, some are facing to the left, to the right, a little bit more up and down. So that variety is just going to make a floral painting feel really nice. So moving on to my second illustration, I wanted this pink background painting to be sort of this just colorful, whimsical, fun mixture of flowers and colors. I just want it to be kind of vibrant and full of life, full of movement. So I'm using some alizarin crimson. I'm using a little bit of yellow ochre, using some of the same green mixture that I already have. So some of that yellow ochre meets hooker's green. And again, I want to make sure that some of my greens are a little more cool. Some are a little bit more warm. So some have a little bit more blue in them. Some have a little bit more yellow. And I'm also adding these little, maybe like forget-me-not flowers, just these little blue ones, using phthalo blue. Trying to make sure I have, all the primary colors. And I also have, so if I have that light pink over to the left, I have this darker pink one over here. Just kind of trying to mix it up. So I want there to be varieties of color, and I want those colors to be throughout the illustration so that it kind of helps to pull the eye around. And just, I think all in all, just the more color and the more fun, the more movement, It's great. So I'm painting also these little, almost like thistle-shaped flowers. And I didn't sketch any of this out ahead of time, so this is kind of I would say it's kind of an exercise for me. I usually feel a lot more comfortable painting when I do have a pencil sketch that I'm working from. So it's a good exercise for me to try and just paint freehand, give it some thought. I try and, I want to move quickly with loose paintings because I do love to get those little moments of bleed. You can see where that green leaf is bleeding up into the pink flower. I love those little moments. But I also find that if I move too quickly, then my painting feels like it wasn't really well thought out. I can end up just putting things down too quickly without giving it enough thought. So there's a balance. And I think that that's kind of maybe like the tricky part of painting in this looser style. One thing I also wanted to mention there is that I added a white gouache flower. You can see that white spot. So usually with watercolor, you cannot paint light. Like if you use, a light yellow, you can't put a light yellow on top of a darker color or whatever color. Usually it's kind of difficult to just lighten. You can always darken things, but it's hard to lighten things. So the exception here is that white paint you see is called gouache, and that is an opaque watercolor. So it's kind of has like a chalky substance in it that helps you so that you can layer it on. So it kind of works almost more like acrylic paint in that you're able to really get some nice coverage, but it does still work like a watercolor paint because it is water activated. So I use white gouache all the time. I kind of always have it nearby in case I need it for something like this. You can also mix it with watercolor. Sometimes I'll mix watercolor paints with white gouache and it'll kind of help to create that more opaque paint so I can layer it on, if I want something to be just a little bit lighter. Hopefully that all makes sense. I'd be really happy to make a gouache tutorial if that would be something that would be helpful for you. I'd be more than happy to make that, so just let me know. So finishing this up with some little details here and there, I'm kind of adding just these little dots, and maybe they can kind of be like little seeds. I don't know what they are. And then I'm adding just a few extra leaves here and there. Just try to make sure it feels nice and filled in. All right, so I'm moving on to my last oval here. So I kind of wanted to match the composition of my first painting, which was that pink rose there. And so for this one, I decided to do a complementary color of blue. So the background of this painting is Payne's Gray, which is kind of like a grayish blue color. And the complement of blue, or the opposite color, if you're looking at a color wheel, is orange. So I thought about like what flowers are orange that I like to paint. So I decided to make this a marigold painting. And just a note here about complementary colors. I did a whole series, or a whole video, I should say, last summer on my Patreon about color theory. If you're interested in that, you can go to Patreon for more information. But complementary colors just help to make each color the most vibrant. It makes each color, like the two opposites, look their very best. And it helps to just create a little more interest in a painting. So I love to use that when I can. For these marigolds, I started with a Naples yellow background. And the cool thing about Naples yellow is actually that for a watercolor paint, it's more on the opaque side. So I'm able to layer it on and really kind of still get that lighter yellow color. So it almost works kind of like gouache. There are some watercolor paints that are more transparent and some are more opaque, and that is more of an opaque color. So for this composition here, I'm just, thinking through it, and I want it to feel balanced. So as you can see, I have some leaves that are coming off to the right and to the left side. I want it to feel balanced, and I think that adding those extra leaves on each side that are kind of peeking out of the oval on both the rose and the marigold, I think that helps to make it feel balanced, make it feel kind of loose, sort of just free form. I like that feeling. Okay, so back to my marigolds. What I'm doing now is I'm grabbing some cadmium red, and I'm just kind of drawing these little horizontal dashes. I'm not, as I said, I didn't sketch anything out. I'm trying to just do this free form and not trying not to overthink it too much. So just doing those little vertical dashes, and I'm trying not to cover up all of the yellow. I don't want to cover up all of that Naples yellow underneath it. And so after I do that, I go back and I grab a darker red. So I'm grabbing some burnt sienna, which is kind of this deep, deep orange color. And I'm dropping in that burnt sienna just in a few spots, not everywhere. And it's just helping to add some darker red-orange values. So it's kind of creating these darker little shadowy bits in my marigold flower. And then I finish it off with just a tiny bit of super dark color. I'm using some burnt umber in there. And now I'm going back with that yellow ochre just to add back a few more light moments, because I think I went a little bit too heavy-handed with those darker values, so I'm just adding back those little highlights. And then to finish up this marigold, I'm just going to add some darker values. And, you know, like I said, I want to make sure that there's dark and light values, warm and cool. Got to have all of that in there, and it's just going to give it so much more interest. And I love the way that feels. And as a thank you for watching this video, I wanted to invite you to visit me at shailenelouise.com/3flowers. And there you'll find a place where you can give me your email and I will send you these 3 illustrations for you to use. You can use them as your lock screen. You can print them out, frame them, give them away as gifts for Valentine's, whatever you want to do. So shailenelouise.com/3flowers, and I'll have that linked above and in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, I have lots of other videos over at patreon.com. I have almost 2 years of tutorials that I've been making, and I have a tier where you can see all of my sketchbook things I'm working on, works in progress. I offer feedback of your artwork. I answer questions. I do giveaways. Just a good time. So patreon.com/shailenelouise. I hope you'll consider joining me there. I'm so appreciative of my patrons. You guys, seriously. So this is the point in my painting process where I will basically just take inventory of how all of these illustrations are feeling. And I go back and just add some little finishing touches. For this center illustration, I think it just needed a little bit more of like these little kind of lighter moments of green, because it felt like it was maybe a little bit heavy with the darker greens. So I went back with just a really light layer. And then I also take that moment to deepen some of the colors or maybe add a little bit of detail to some of the colorful parts of this flower. So adding some Indian yellow to this flower here, adding some deeper reds to my flowers, just some deeper moments to the centers. Just adding that extra detail really helps to make the painting come to life. After they're all dry, I take off that masking tape and voila, finished paintings. These were so much fun to create. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you enjoyed it. I always love to hear your feedback on what was helpful for you, what kind of videos you'd like to see in the future. Yeah, so if you enjoyed it, I hope you'll give this video a like because it helps people find my channel. And if you really enjoyed, I hope you'll subscribe. And I'll be back again soon with more art videos. Thank you guys so much for watching.